For question number 1, it says analyze the graphs of the functions f of x and g of x. F, I'm going to put in pink. It's this graph. So question number 1 says write the equation of f of x. Now, what could help you is a table of values. I recognize the order pairs are -2, -8, -1, 1. It doesn't have it labeled here, but it goes to the origin, 0, 0. And then 1, 1, and 2, 8. Something that you should recognize is that this is an odd degree polynomial. The easiest one you know is x to the first, starts down, ends up, and it has the same end behavior. Starts down, ends up. Well, what's the next odd degree polynomial you know? X cubed. Let's see if that matches it. Class, what's 1 to the third power? 1. What's 2 to the 8th power? I'm sorry, 2 to the third power? 8. -1 to the third power? 1. -2 to the third power? -8. So, what is our function? X to the third power. Raise your hand if you got that. The function g of x is a transformation of the function of f of x. Describe the transformations performed on f of x that result in the function g of x. Explain your reasoning. So I'm going to use first observations. Now this one's difficult for students. You're always asking, is it flipped on the x or the y axis? The easiest one to use is just flipped over the x axis. The reason why is because if you chose the y axis, you would have a negative on the inside. So it's easiest explaining that the a value is going to be reflected over the x-axis if you have an a value negative. So reflect over the x-axis. Therefore, my a value is going to be -1. The next thing I notice about my graph is if you put g of x, so here's my origin, and then you'll notice the origin is the 5th point, or there's 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your 5th point's right here. So I notice that it's going to be shifted up, 1, 2, 3. So shifted up, 3. Class, what letter is it going when it means up and down? A, B, C, or D? D. So being up, it's going to be a positive number. So that means D is equal to 3. So I have an A value of -1. I have a D value that's 3. And then I notice if I put the new coordinates in g of x, let's use yellow. So g of x will be yellow. So my order pairs are -2, 7. -1, 3.5. 0, 3. 1, 2.5. And 2, -1. So what I can start doing is actually I can just use my observations and letters and numbers to create a rule. And this rule can help me write the equation. And then it might give us an idea of what the last third observation is. So a value is -1. Class, does that affect the x or the y? That affects the y coordinate. So I'm just going to write a negative there. The d value, does it affect the x or the y? This affects your y value, so I'm going to write plus 3. So let's see what my rule looks like so far. I'm going from -2 to a -1. Well, I need something that'll affect the x-coordinates. And to affect the x-coordinates, do you see how it's going from -2 to -1? So how do you go from -2 to -1? You can divide it by, class, what can you divide it by? You can divide it by 2. So if you're dividing that coordinate by 2, you want something that looks like this, right? Because if I take -2 divided by 2, that gives me -1. That's the new coordinate. So let's write our equation now. G of x. And remember, the parent function is a times f b x minus c plus d. Class, we have an a value. -1. Class, do we have a b value? That was this one, so our b coordinate is 1/2. So we can write 1/2 here. Do we have a c value? No. And do we have a d value?
Yeah.
Plus 3. So let's simplify that. I don't need the parentheses here, right? Class, what's negative times a positive?
Negative.
So this will become what?
Negative.
Negative 1/2 f of x. So our f function should have been right there. And then plus 3. So there's your d value. Your b value was here, but we just multiplied. And then your negative value for a. And the last question, is the function g of x even? So g of x is yellow. Is it even, odd, or neither? Class, is it folded on the y-axis? No, so it's not this one. Is it symmetrical about the origin? No. Remember, look at opposite corners, like you're folding the corners. This one has a tree coming out from the ground, and this one has like a tree kind of floating out from the air. So the answer would be neither. Not symmetrical about the y-axis, and not symmetrical about the origin. So hopefully those were some big ideas that we've been learning for the past 2 weeks. Question? Alright, so Angel, thank you to Angel, he pointed out that if we use the order pairs, that would be incorrect. So let's show you how the 1/2 should really be -0.5 or -1/2 in front of the y coordinate. That says a y. No, it looks like a g, but if you take your order pair, such as from the original one, the x values do not change. So remember now, it's being reflected over the y-axis, x-axis, so it's up down here. And then the question is, how do you go from 8 to -1? So the x-coordinate does not change. 8, half of 8 is 4, and the opposite of 4 is -4.
I love math. You don't love math? What's wrong with you?